Well, hello. I hope this is recording. It's October 17th, 2016. My name is William Warren Monroe, and I'm going to describe how BC statistics officials deceived Statistics Canada's statisticians and people, as well as people from Finance Canada, regarding Canada's Equalization Payments Program. Now, for many years, I have advocated the verification and reproduction of numbers being used to guide public policy, such as the methods and data used to determine Canada's equalization payments. Although I've written about this topic many times, it's come up again recently in my correspondence with the Canadian Population Society Board of Directors. In particular, we're looking at the importance of being able to discuss openly statistical methods and what strengths and weaknesses of the methods and data, and and uh, uh, and make improvements where we can. And if we find that methods and data are not the correct methods and data that accompany so-called findings, if they're not correct, the importance of the Canadian Population Society to be able to address these issues, as well as I've been in contact with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, as well as Stats Canada regarding questions about the quality of population estimates recently. So I want to explain how BC Stats officials deceived Statistics Canada and Finance Canada regarding the methods and data used to determine the equalization payments. But this example should not be considered an isolated event, right? This is just one example where I happened to be there and I could see what happened and I can relay this information to you. So instead, though, it should be taken into consideration as in light of ways that we can avoid the problems, what they call moral hazards, the intrinsic risks and the dangers of monopoly that can occur when you have a small group of people in control of a particular data set. In this case, it's the population estimates, is what I'm looking at, and that this small group of people is not responsible, does not have to respond to anybody, does not have to explain themselves or anything. How can that happen? I think that this is of importance, not just for the people of British Columbia, but of course for the people of Canada. But not just that, we see this um, sort of ethos not just here, but also not just in government. It's just quite a remarkable thing to see how this is spread. It's throughout the United States in the financial banking sector, government, revolving doors, all these sorts of peculiar ways of uh, of uh, of not referring to reality wherever we can or wherever they can. So, anyways, so how do I know about this topic? I served as a population analyst for BC Statistics from 2002 to 2006, during which time Statistics Canada did a study for Finance Canada regarding the methods and data to determine equalization payments, a study that included methods and data to estimate population. So in 2002, I was asked by the director of the population section of the provincial government of British Columbia's statistical agency. His name is Don McCrae. I mention his name because he does change his position. He becomes the executive director. And I was asked by him, along with my other coworkers, to figure out why BC statistics uh, estimates were so different. The municipal population estimates for 2001, which were explained in a 1998 population estimates methods paper, why these numbers were so different from the actual 2001 census of population results, which came out in 2002. So the error was unacceptably large. It was over. It was closer to 10%, and if I remember, and therefore it was right to try to figure out why. So BC Statistics used a method to create the population estimates. They used two indicators: electrical landline hookups and old age security, or OAS. data to estimate the population for each year after the 1996 census until the 2001 census results would be released in 2002. So, just to be clear, in 2002, BC Stats would would come up with, using their method, they would come up with the 2001 results, right? And then they would normally publish those. But because the census comes out in 2002, the 2001 census comes out, they can compare, like why, and in this case, why were they so different? So to figure this out was fairly easy because I had the luxury of looking at clues from the past. I could look at the indicators I could look for indicators that showed the change between 1996 and 2001 that could possibly explain the difference between BC Stats 2001 estimates and the actual 2001 census population and dwelling results. Since old age security contributed little to explain the change in population, I did not use this indicator for testing accuracy. I actually removed it and I focused right on electrical landline hookups. Um, I should mention that there were two other co-workers who did analysis. Their analysis did not prove to they could not explain why the BC stats and the census numbers were so different. Um, the chief demographer said to split the data into urban and rural. That did not work. Um, that was Dave O'Neill. And Frank Ip, who is the immigration analyst, he just did a technical kind of thing. He just said, "Oh, pick this column. I've seen that. I've seen that before." Where they'll just no real reasoning. They'll just pick a data row of data and run it, and it didn't explain anything either. So anyways, this was my thinking. This is what happened. I was able to develop a hypothesis and test it, and it worked. And so, the way it started was given that the electrical landline hookups counted dwellings and not people, I tested the assumption that the change in the number of people per electrical meter, uh, which is an approximation of number of people per dwelling, was I tested the assumption that the change in the number of people per dwelling were near the same for all municipalities in BC. Okay, right? So the number of people. So since the 60s, and this is sort of we kind of know this in the population analysis that there are fewer people per household over the last 30, 40 years. And so there's an assumption that most places are having fewer people per household, but that it was moving more or less the same through for all municipalities, or if there was any variation or difference between them, that it was not impacting, not influencing our estimates. So I was testing that assumption. So I simply looked at the 2001 census of population and dwelling data for the change in number of people per dwelling. It's right there between 1996 and 2001, and I found that most municipalities, saw a decline in the number of people per dwelling, but 22 stayed the same or increased, and some increased substantially, particularly Surrey. With this additional data, um, rerunning rerunning the BC Stats population estimate method with this additional information produced population numbers that were almost exactly the same as the 2001 census of population and dwelling results, less than 2% error. I think it was actually 1.8. Hindsight is 2020. I mean, that was very easy to do. So, anyways, consequently, the director, along with the chief demographer, decided to use this additional information to change the method and data to correct their 2001 census of population estimates. They decided to run two different. This was interesting. They decided to run two different population estimate models, methods, one for the municipalities with a decreasing number of people per dwelling, and the other for the municipalities with the same or an increasing number of people per dwelling between 1996 and 2001. I adamantly advocated over and over again that we not proceed in this manner at all. Do not split the data into two different groups and then run them and then rejoin them. That is prone to error. I stated clearly many times to both the director and the chief demographer that we needed to do more study, in particular look for indicators that would help us see the change in number of people per household. For example, BC Care Card holders registrations per municipality. So you would just have it aggregated. You don't look at anybody's individual registration. You're just looking if from one year to the next, if there's an increase in number of people um, card holders. If you do have that, then you can, and you have an idea of the dwellings, which you can do too, then you can have a pretty, which is what your electrical hookups do. You can have a pretty good idea of what the population change would be then, right? That makes sense, right? But astoundingly for us statisticians like myself, but perhaps not surprisingly in light of the poor judgment of splitting the data, the director and the chief demographer did not explain to anybody the new method and data being used to create the 2001 population estimates. They continued to point people to the method and data described in the 1998 estimations methods paper. Not only were people of British Columbia misled with subprovincial consequences, particularly opening and closing of public facilities, including schools, Canadians were also misled regarding the methods used to determine equalization payments. So in 2012, 6 years after I was dismissed for insubordination, uh, in 2012, I found out that in 2004, while I was serving as a population analyst for BC Stats, that Finance Canada had asked Statistics Canada to look into refinements in the methods and data used to determine equalization payments. Statistics Canada asked for input from Canada's three other statistical agencies, British Columbia, Quebec, and the Northwest Territories. Again, astoundingly for statisticians, but not surprising in light of the poor judgment. The BC Statistics Director and Chief Demographer told Statistics Canada, I'm just going to make a quick change here, addition here, that BC used the methods and data described in the 1998 population estimations method paper to come up with wonderfully accurate 2001 population estimates. BC Stats Director and Chief Demographer left out the fact that they used information from the 2001 Census of Population counts, the number of people who are dying, to reduce the error between BC Stats 2001 estimate and Canada's 2001 Census of Population and Dwelling results to below 2%. Having deceived Statistics Canada's statisticians and having been deceived, Statistics Canada's statisticians endorsed BC statistics methods and data used to produce population estimates, claiming that they were of better quality, that BC Stats methods and data were of better quality than Statistics Canada. After discovering that BC statistics officials were still pointing people to the 1998 methods paper, it was revised. This paper was revised in 2011, but it did not explain the real methods and data used by BC Statistics to create the 2001 population numbers. In order to, so I was there, right? I was there. 2000. The report came out in 2005, February 28th. I remember the day clearly because I was called in. We had a section meeting that day. It just happened to be the weekly section meeting, and I was getting, harangued by this the cartographer, who's like not a statistician. She's not really like. Anyways, and I said, look, I've already explained that data set. You know, if you don't believe me, go talk to the boss. And apparently, that was one of the terrible thing to say. The chief demographer who had been sitting there staring at the wall. Normally, he runs a meeting. It was just. I kept on looking at him, wondering what the heck is up. Like he wasn't saying anything. And then he calls me into his office angrily, tells me that I would never to talk to anybody like that again. And then I just started to get hammered like with everything. It was unbelievable. I watched this movie about pirates recently, and in it, it showed how pirates would kill people, just to kill people to eradicate any witnesses of their theft, of their lying, stealing, cheating ways, and which reminded me of what I went through. I contend that in order to eradicate any witnesses, especially a population analyst for BC Statistics who knew how BC Stats created the 2001 population numbers, I became the subject of aggressive yelling. I was accused of making my coworkers fear for their safety. I was removed from the contacts list. So Statistics Canada people wouldn't call me. Anyways, I was accused of making my female coworkers fear for their safety, not allowed mediation, required to have a psychological assessment because the officials, the chief demographer and executive director, now executive director in 2005, claimed that they believed that I had personal problems affecting my work. For refusing this inappropriate channel and insisting on mediation, I was dismissed for insubordination. For going down the wrong channel, this is what I was accused of eventually, 'cause I was not allowed to have arbitration regarding the real matters in dispute, namely the real methods and data used to create the population estimates. Okay, so although the BC statistics officials focused their attention on discrediting me to cover up their deceit, it was not about me. Anyone who took up that position of population analyst for the provincial government of British Columbia and who figured out why, who answered the call, was asked to figure it out and did figure out why BC Statistics 2001 population estimates were so far off the actual census counts for 2001, that person would come under attack. They would be attacked, accused of making their coworkers fear for their safety, forced to have a psychological assessment as a condition of continuing work. And if they refused and insisted on just uh, focusing on the real methods and data, um, they would be dismissed for insubordination and denied arbitration for going down the wrong channel. Okay, so just so you know, I mean, it's just how bizarre your statistical agencies have become in Canada, or an example, anyways. And again, like I say, it isn't about me and it isn't an isolated event. You got to realize that these people still have the ability to do that over again. There's no safeguards, no formal policies, and clear accountabilities for that are agreed upon amongst Canada's four statistical agencies: Statistics Canada, BC Stats, Quebec Statistical Agency, and the Northwest Territories as well. So, a solution, though, to safeguard against the intrinsic risks and dangers of monopoly would be to verify that the correct methods and data accompany findings rather than incorrect methods and data accompanying unfounded numbers. Okay, by reproducing those numbers, take those methods, take those data and reproduce the numbers. Make sure, right? Make sure, right? Therefore, I continue to advocate that public policymakers agree to Statistics Canada. It does have formal policies and clear accountabilities, as laid out in Ivan Falagi's presentation to the European Council in 1999. Falagi reminds us of the virtuous circle of conceptual work leading to data development, testing of existing hypotheses, and formulation of new ones, and refinement of conceptual frameworks whose validation leads to further data development. You know, it makes me wonder, what would the world look like now if the integrity of analytic products from official statistical agencies, from BC Stats to Eurostats, were safe from deceit? It's an old saying, and I think it's appropriate to repeat. The truth will set you free.